Welcome to the Serbian capital, Belgrade, for this new edition of the interview on France 24. Key elections will determine the future orientation of Serbia, a country torn between East and West, between Russia and the European Union. Well, my guest today is Serbia's Foreign Minister, Vuk Jeremic. Mr. Jeremic, thank you for having us. Just for our viewers to understand what's at stake, your main opponent, the right-wing Progressive Party of Serbia, won the parliamentary election. Its leader, Tomislav Nikolic, will face your ally, pro-European Boris Tadic, in the second round of the election on the 20th of May. This election has once again revealed the old divides in Serbian society between nationalists and pro-Europeans. Who has won?
The ruling coalition has actually reinvigorated, has strengthened its presence in the parliament. So this government has won a mandate. We have one re-election, and I expect in that sense that there's going to be a strong continuity of policy and strategic orientation on behalf of Serbia.
But you can't deny that the Nationalist Party of Mr. Nikolic did very well in the parliamentary election. How do you explain this? I would
rather define it as a protest vote. It's not an easy situation for an incumbent government to win re-election. So a relatively strong showing of the main opposition party, I would primarily attribute to the fact that not everybody is happy with their current economic situation. And I don't think that the major factor in the high showing of the main opposition party was their orientation towards Europe. It was much more to do with the economic governance, but I'm glad that the composition of the parliament is such that when it comes to the coalition making, I expect more of the same. I expect continuity, and I expect that the incumbent government is going to stay in office for the next 4 years.
If Tomislav Nikolic wins the presidential election on the 20th of May, will this undermine Serbia's chances to join the EU?
I think it is very, very difficult to imagine that Mr. Nikolic is going to be able to muster a majority. If you look at the numbers which are indicative for the parliamentary poll, then I think that Mr. Tadic is a favorite. It's not going to be an easy walk, of course, but I do expect that Mr. Tadic is going to win. He's going to stay the president for the next 5 years, and once that happens, Serbia is going to continue its efforts along the path of the European process.
Serbia was given candidate status by the European Union in March. What's next? When do you hope to start accession talks with Brussels?
Well, I expect that by the end of this year, we're going to be able to get a date. I don't know when this date is going to be, but this date is going to be fixed. But before the end of this year, I think it is going to be possible to muster the necessary consensus amongst the 27 member states of the European Union that an explicit fixed date for the start of the accession negotiation is given to Serbia.
Euroscepticism is rising across Europe. Europe seems to suffer from some sort of enlargement fatigue. Is Serbia still welcome?
Well, obviously we're facing greatest economic crisis in the history of the European Union, and this economic crisis obviously has its political repercussions, and one of these repercussions is, decreased level of enthusiasm in certain quarters of the European Union when it comes to, possibility to admit new members. There are a lot of people in the European Union who are saying, let's, sort our house first, let's, get the thing stable inside Europe proper before we go on to invite new members. And in that sense, of course, we did feel this sentiment, but we're not disheartened by this. European process is going to be a lengthy one for us. It requires a lot of reforms. There's so many things that we need to do in order to qualify for membership in the European Union. By the time we fulfill criteria, I expect that Europe is going to be back on a path of growth again, and that it's once again going to become very manifestly and obviously in favor of all those candidates to join.
But wouldn't Serbia be better off if it strengthened its ties with Russia?
Well, the relations with Russia, we're talking about really a historical relationship. We're talking about several hundreds of years of partnership through world wars, through various crises. We have a culture that is, making us close with Russia, but geographically, if you look at the map, we're part of Europe. We're at the heart of Europe in geographical terms. One day when we're in Europe, I believe this day is going to come. It's going to come in not too distant a future, then we will be able to maintain our close relations with Russia whilst being a fully fledged member of the European Union.
Let's address the main sticking point with Brussels, Kosovo. Your country still refuses to recognize the independence of Kosovo, and Serbian officials have warned it will be difficult to reach an agreement with Pristina on telecommunications and energy, though this is a pre-requirement from Brussels to start accession talks. Are we heading towards deadlock?
I don't think that there is that much difficulty between Serbia and Brussels, because Brussels is the EU, it's the 27, and there are countries that are member states of the European Union, there are 5 of them as a matter of fact, that also have a very strong view on independence of Kosovo that is identical to ours. We do have difference with a number of European capitals who did recognize Kosovo. You know, this dialogue is not an easy dialogue, but this is the first time in the history of the Balkans that people are trying to resolve an issue of this gravity and complexity through peaceful negotiations. And, you know, some breakthroughs have been made so far. Now, after the government is formed in Serbia, we are ready to resume this dialogue. We are going to address all these outstanding issues, the ones that you mentioned as well. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but I'm an optimist that if there's goodwill on both sides, and I'm sure there's going to be a goodwill on behalf of the European Union that is a broker in these negotiations, that we're going to continue making progress.
Will you ever accept the independence of Kosovo?
No.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has called on Serbia to dismantle the so-called parallel structures in North Kosovo. They still rely heavily on your help from Belgrade. What do you respond?
As far as we're concerned, the parallel structures are the one in Pristina, because we have our constitution. It's a very clear-cut constitution. It's a democratic constitution by a peaceful democratic country that is a member state of the United Nations. And parallel structures in the context of both our constitution as well as the Security Council Resolution 1244, which was the last international community's say on the issue of Kosovo, make the institutions in Pristina the truly parallel institution.
So you're telling me it's acceptable to finance the structures in North Mitrovica?
It would be anti-constitutional for us to stop doing that. And we are a democratic country that behaves in line with our laws and our constitution.
We understand the situation remains very difficult between Belgrade and Pristina. What kind of compromise would be acceptable?
We're in the process of negotiations, and the previous attempts at negotiating the solution to Kosovo failed, in my opinion, primarily because the parties, ended up publicly stating as to what has to be the outcome of the negotiations, and therefore those negotiations failed. I think this is an open-ended negotiation, and I believe that the outcome that is going to be acceptable to both parties, confirmed by the international community, in other words, the Security Council of the United Nations, needs to drop out of these negotiations. And I don't think it'd be useful to, spell out as to what needs to be the result of a negotiating process. We have the best possible will to negotiate, to be flexible, to see what can be done so that both parties in the end of the day can, give something in order to get something and end up making a compromise.
Vuk Jeremic, you're running for president of the UN General Assembly. The vote will take place on the 8th of June. You're among the favorites. Are you confident you can win this vote?
Every nation of the world has a vote. One country, one vote. There are 193 countries that are voting on June 8, and I hope that the majority of the world nations is going to give its confidence to Serbia to lead the General Assembly for the period of 1 year. This is the first time ever that Serbia is running for a post, and we've carried out a very open international diplomacy, open to the entire world, all 5 continents. I've visited over 100 countries, and Serbia is a good friend with many, many nations around the world. If we get elected, I think we're going to conduct responsibilities of the office and in line with the majority of the worldview, and I expect that the majority of the world is going to be with Serbia on June 8th.
We'll be watching the results on France 24. Vuk Jeremic, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this edition of the interview on France 24 from the Serbian capital, Belgrade. From all of us here, goodbye.